Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all the ships at sea. I'm Teresa Mitchell. This is called This Is Now Bridge to a Better World. Ani is still out of the country. And so I'm going to do a brief show today, and I'm glad that you could tune in. I had a bit of a bug last week, and I'm feeling much better right now. So, first, the bad news. Sorry to give you bad news, but we lost a Democratic representative. Uh, and he was very much a labor advocate and an environmental advocate. So he's done the good work, and now he's gone on. His name was Grijalva, I believe. I am going to work the best I can with my. Show you my teleprompter here. Uh, this may require some peering, but there's more bad news that Putin and Trump are still kicking and doing their ridiculous thing. And the further bad news is that Putin thinks he's got the Ukrainians surrounded in the Kursk region that they invaded, hoping for some leverage. But maybe he doesn't, because he's been wrong about that sort of thing many times before. And also, Johns Hopkins University has had to bow to the constant blows from the Doge attacks, the illegal executive branch, if you can call it that, attacks that have smashed USAID illegally. They have effectively cut so much funds and caused so much uncertainty that Johns Hopkins international efforts, which I want you to know, support research against AIDS, just an incredibly insidious disease, and even against tuberculosis and malnutrition and all kinds of things internationally, a huge international effort, an American, really a bright spot, something that makes people look up to Americans. This is the thing that Musk and Trump really hate, and of course Putin hates. 2,000 workers are being cut. I didn't know that Johns Hopkins put out 2,000 workers, but of course they do. Doing the good work, doing the medical work. Well, not anymore, because that may be tied up in the courts, but it's tied up. And that was the whole idea of going out and breaking things, as the tech bros so proudly announce. You know, something tells me these are the same toddlers that would kick over your sandcastle and say, I broke things. Well, no one's ever stopped these toddlers, and now they're loose. Anyway, now we can start turning to the good news. And the good news is things really are getting tied up in courts. And so we are coming up to the constitutional crisis that we've long deserved. I say that because Americans have been trained not to be active, not to understand, not to be proactive in politics. And there's a terrible price to be paid for that. And the price is that, of course, the demagogues were sure to move in sooner or later. We have kissed too much boss ass. We have agreed too much to lies about unions. And we have agreed to too much anti-democratic rumor mongering. And this is the society that we now have. And this is the people that we now are, that we are more afraid of linking with each other and opposing our oppressors, which is just a terrible thing. But we can, hopefully severe conditions and the impending, let's say, withdrawal of our Social Security checks, I'm very serious about that, will possibly galvanize us. We'll see. Nothing's galvanized us so far, but we shall see. And there are those of you, of course, who pop up every week, and bless you, and thanks for showing up. Hello, Tat. Hello, John. Glad to see you, and glad that you're here. And I'm feeling pretty feisty, and so I guess I'm going to be yelling a lot to make up for the fact that this is going to be a short show. But one of the things I wanted to say, and one of the things I want to encourage from you, please, is to get in the habit of offering brief civic lessons. And I say this because it becomes more and more clear to me, the more that I talk to Americans and the more that I watch Americans on the media, that we do not know the most basic things about the United States. We don't know the most basic things about where we live. We've been taught to be, as I say, we've been taught to be very passive, to get along, go along with the boss, and hopefully you can hold that job and not rock the boat and that sort of thing. Keep your head down and all those little phrases that we've learned. Well, that time has passed, and now it's stand up, stand with each other, or perish together. So, well, or surely perish apart is how that phrase is supposed to go. I think stand together or perish apart. So you need to be able to rattle off those civic lessons. And listen, I know y'all know your civic lessons, so I'm not trying to teach you, but you do need to be, just on this side of glib about it. The question that needs to be answered is why is a president not a king? Why is a president not a king? A president is not a king for because the whole system was set up to oppose kings, but also because the president presides over the executive branch, and it is the executive branch as opposed to the total branch or the the dictator's branch or whatever else it might have gotten called or the king's branch. Um, it is there to faithfully execute the laws, and who writes the laws? Congress. Who has the power of the purse, which is super important in writing laws. You don't get any laws enforced. No laws get executed. And this is execution in the sense of doing the thing right. No laws get done without money. And so, of course, the money is a super important part, an inextricable part of the laws. And Congress has the power of the purse. So, for example, uh, they put up USAID. President Kennedy put that up. Or they put up the Environmental Protection Agency. Why? Because by the 70s, the whole country was so very thoroughly polluted that it was reducing the lifespan of its inhabitants, despite at that time our increasing, even workers were increasing their income right up until almost the 1970s. So why were people dying? Well, at that time, pollution had a lot to do with it. So why is a president not a king? Because he he is limited intentionally uh, to a certain role. The role is to execute the laws that have been out there by Congress. We have separation of powers, and people remember that phrase separation of powers, but they're a little fuzzy on just how that works. Well, it's not terribly complicated. At its base, we have the executive branch making sure that the laws are faithfully executed, that the agencies created by acts of Congress, laws, actually do their thing. And we have the judicial branch to make sure it is so. At the base, that's all it is. Executive branch does what Congress lays out in the law. Judicial branch makes sure that it is so. And the reason you need to be able to rattle that off is because so many Americans have no idea. They don't know what separation of powers. They don't know what that is separation of powers. Americans don't know this. So I would ask you practice that. Practice that because you never know when a mic's going to be thrust in your face or you're just going to be talking to somebody at a bar or in the street or at work. Why shouldn't we have a king? What's the difference? President, king? Well, there's a huge difference. There really is a huge difference in the way the society moves forward and how corrupt it is, because we have these separation of powers so that each branch can check each other. And you may have noticed that when it comes to ratings of world corruption, the United States was far out of the top list. Other countries led that list for the longest. Now we have slid far and fast in those ratings, and the US is becoming more and more a corrupt country. And the more we allow it, and the more we look the other way, the more corrupt it becomes. So these are fraught times indeed, and it is extremely fraught when you see things like, previously when Trump was president, he was uh, mugging for Goya beans just because he was happy about Goya beans being conservative. And more recently, after after Elon Musk literally choked with grief over the fact that people hate his guts for perfectly good reasons, he made a point of buying a Tesla on the White House lawn. That is absolute blatant corruption. That is not what the president is there for, to support someone's industry. Might as well get a chuckle in there, but this is the sort of corruption that is destroying the nation. And this Doge agency is not an agency of Congress, is not funded by Congress, is not accountable to Congress. The General Accounting Office, the General Accountability Office, GAO, uh, is set to track agencies through the executive branch. And it was funded by Congress. And a great way to reduce fraud and abuse would have been to give, $500 million to the GAO and tell them to go for it. Doge has nothing to do with reducing fraud and abuse, and everything to do with forwarding the incredibly insidious plan of Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and all of the dark MAGA, plotters, conspiracists, literally, who wish to break up the United States. This is literally what they intend to do, what they write about, and build a sort of Yarvin state. That's Yarvin, if you don't know. Several Yarvin states where workers have no rights. That's the basis of it. They want to be able to do their thing and not have to worry about little people. And so, to further this, one of the most important things that they have wanted to do, and which dovetails with what the Republicans have wanted to do for the last 80 something years, I think 86 years, is destroy Social Security. Oh my God, Social Security pisses them off. Why? Because it is effective. It pisses them off specifically because it is not a Ponzi scheme. And when they say it's a Ponzi scheme, that's just their lie. And they're so far from the truth. And anyone who says that is simply repeating their lies. Anyone who says SS is a Ponzi scheme doesn't know what a Ponzi scheme is and doesn't know what Social Security is. Social Security hasn't missed a payment all these 86 years. And it is a treasure for the United States, and it prevents poverty. And if there's one thing that's very clear in Yarvin's and Musk's and Thiel's and Zuckerberg's and all the billionaires' philosophy, it is that people like you and me richly deserve all the precarity and stress that we suffer because we are not rich. And if we were not inferior, if we were not deserving of extermination, we would be rich. An extremely simplistic worldview. One could easily argue a dim-witted worldview, and it is theirs. And how did it get to be such a dim-witted worldview? Didn't they get their massive funds by being brilliant? No, they inherited tremendous amounts of money, and they were at some point in their lives active and very lucky, and they got other people to start managing that wealth, and it piles up because we have a parasitic system of capitalism, which is fairly unregulated in the United States. So that's what I have to say about Social Security right now. It is a crisis because, as you'll see if you look on commondreams.org, at least 10 and several more doubtless operatives from Doge have been in Social Security, in the administration, inside their computers, and I believe the technical term is they've been fucking it up. So the first sign of that to me was when I received a letter mistakenly from Social Security. I'd never received a mistaken letter from Social Security. If Social Security is pretty wired down, or it was. It's a game that the U.S. Has held pretty tightly for all these years, and especially into the computer age. And I received a letter that would have been correct if it had been sent 4 years previous. And then a following letter that warned me not to take actions that would have been available to me 4 years previous. And I thought, oh, someone's in there fucking with the system. And so now it's come out into the press that this is so. Don't know how many are there. The idea is obviously to create, by the firings also, the illegal firings, remember the separation of state, a pseudo agency created by the executive branch cannot go destroying the agencies that are created by Congress because that is the opposite of the faithful execution of the law, simply. You want to know why it's illegal. You could say, well, it's a violation of the Administrative Procedures Act, and it is. You can say it's a violation of USC 5, and it is, but it's a violation of separation of powers at its base. So, pardon me for derailing myself. Let me get back to some good news. This is going on at Social Security. They are defunding, trying to defund. They haven't actively defunded Social Security, but they are sabotaging it, is what I meant to say. And that sabotage became obvious, as I said, and the idea of firing people, and let me put that in air quotes because they're not legally fired and should not leave their desks. Do not leave your desk. The idea is to make it very difficult to, at this point, start or alter anything at Social Security. And doubtless some people, probably loud leftists who are known to be transgender, will cease to receive their checks and discover that there is so much chaos there that there's not a damn thing they can do about it in the short term. It's quite a threat. It certainly is a threat to me. don't have I don't have millions in the bank, and I scarcely have thousands in the bank. So it is scary, and the solution is to be louder and louder and louder and more and more and more active. So I'm proud to say that I personally have been in the streets. I have been on the phone this morning. I called the congressional switchboard, told them to vote no on closure. I've called Merkley twice and Wyden once, and tried to call Chuck Schumer and tell them to vote no on closure because this relates to the continuing resolution that the Republicans want, which is basically an enabling act. And the argument that Chuck Schumer is making is that if they don't vote for some sort of continuing resolution, well, the government will go bankrupt, and then Trump will be able to do all kinds of crazy things, and they won't have anything to stop them with. And this is just Chuck Schumer talk. It's not accurate. Um, the lack of control in terms of Chuck Schumer's idea of control probably doesn't change much whether the resolution is passed or not. But blocking the Republicans is blocking the Republicans. That's really the most important thing, is to just put their hand right in the Republicans' face and say no, no further, because they need 60 votes because of their filibuster rules, which are stupid, but they are in place. And there's something that the Democrats can do right now to stop Republicans, and that is to stop their continuing resolution to frustrate the living hell out of them, to force the Republicans, the House of Representatives, to reconvene, which they really don't want to do. They want their Easter break. They're out of here, man. No, no on closure. Call them now. Call the congressional switchboard. 202-456-1111 is one of the numbers. Pardon me. I've been yelling so much, I'm starting to cough. Okay, I said I would keep this short. Um, I I noticed also that Lee Zeldin is destroying the EPA, and it really reminded me of Ann Gorsuch. This is done under Reagan. He also had Fox and the Hen House appointments, which is one reason why he was a destructive son of a bitch and a root of the problem that we have now. He was lionized. I won't say all my life because he wasn't elected until after I was out of high school, but he's been made out to be this great man, and he was also a fool, a useful fool for the very rich, and he also destroyed the EPA. And Gorsuch, his appointee, immediately cut the funds of the EPA by 22%, and fired lots of people and screwed up things that they were doing, pulled out their support in ongoing legislation, trying to clean up the environment. And so it took years and years and years to undo the damage of Ann Gorsuch, who, incidentally, if you recognize the name, is the mother of Gorsuch, the Supreme Court appointee. She died at age of 62 of cancer, and I like to think that perhaps that cancer was hurried along by some of the nitrates or mercury that she didn't give a damn about. But I don't know that for a fact. As I was saying, this is now a bridge to a better world. I'm Teresa Mitchell. And I also want to talk about the tariffs. I talked about how you need to be able to rattle off the separation of powers. And I believe that is an effective thing to do in the social media everywhere. Explain what separation of powers is, explain why we do not have a king. And it is also good to explain to every MAGA head and everyone else who hasn't thought about it what a tariff is. It's simply a tax. You have something coming into the U.S. The U.S. now puts up a hand and says, no, you got to pay to buy this thing. So who's buying? Well, the buying is on this side of the border. I mean, look at it in very simple terms. You've got a bushel of beans. You come to the border. You say, hey, I've got this bushel of beans for $1. And they stop you at the border and they say, oh, no, you don't. No one can buy that without paying an extra quarter. And you're like, okay, whatever, just give me my buck. So you do that, and whoever buys it pays the extra quarter. And where does the quarter go? The quarter goes into the government, and this is something else that needs to be asked because I guarantee that if it is not followed carefully, Trump's people will get the tariff taxes. Because how could they not? Of course, they're going to do that because people don't understand tariffs in the first place. So where's that extra money going to go? It needs to be followed around. Anyway, so that means that we on this side of the border, we Americans pay extra. What it means at the base, and I suppose this is not really going to be fully understood until someone goes out and tries to buy their new truck and discovers they have to pay an extra $10,000 or $20,000 for the truck. Why? Why did it go up so much? Why did it exceed other rates of inflation? Because a tariff has been applied to it and you're paying it. So I hope that I hope that a lot of people can get that explanation soon, and I suppose they'll get the explanation one way or another. They can get it from you in advance, or they can get it in their pocketbooks and cry about it. Cry like Musk when he was interviewed this week, because he's just, people are just so mean to him, and he just can't understand why all he wants to do is to save Americans money, the lying son of a bitch. Okay, this has been this is now Bridge to a Better World. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for your comments. It's great to see everyone there. And of course, this will be up as a recording all week. And if I get ambitious, I may do some more. And look for Ani's tarot readings to return sometime soon. We're getting good news about that. And so hopefully Ani will be back in the US before too long. And my love goes out to you. Our love goes out to you and to all the ships at sea. Goodbye now. Bye bye. Ooh, it went black and white for a second. That's interesting.